Captain Maya Rodriguez stared at the gilded envelope sitting on her desk like it might explode, which, given her experience with alien correspondence, was not entirely outside the realm of possibility. "Chip, run this by me one more time." The Vrelian Collective sent an armed courier, who required 3 forms of identification and a retinal scan, to deliver a dinner invitation. Her AI assistant materialized as a floating blue orb beside her shoulder, somehow managing to sound perpetually exhausted despite being software. "That is correct, Captain. The invitation is for a formal, diplomatic dinner at the Vrelian Embassy, scheduled for 1900 hours tomorrow evening." Maya picked up the envelope with 2 fingers, as if it might bite, and the waiver of liability I had to sign before touching it. Standard protocol, apparently. "Chip, I've been to 47 diplomatic functions in the last 2 years. None of them required me to acknowledge that the host government is not responsible for psychological trauma, physical injury, or, quote, unforeseen cultural complications, unquote. The Vrelians are very thorough," Chip offered. Maya opened the invitation. The paper was some kind of shimmering material that probably cost more than her apartment. The calligraphy was impeccable. The message was deeply suspicious. "Captain Maya Rodriguez, you are cordially invited to a diplomatic dinner in honor of potential human integration into the Galactic Council. Formal attire requested. No weapons necessary." Absolutely no weapons necessary. We cannot stress enough how unnecessary weapons are for this completely safe and normal dinner. She read the last part out loud, her voice dripping with skepticism. "They mention no weapons 3 times. Chip, I noticed that as well. When someone tells you 3 times that you don't need a weapon, what does that tell you?" Chip's orb flickered in what Maya had learned to recognize as digital anxiety. "That you definitely need a weapon. Gold star for the computer." Maya stood up and walked to a closet, pushing past the ridiculous collection of formal wear required for diplomatic functions. Humans had been in contact with galactic civilization for only 5 years, and she'd already accumulated outfits for 17 different cultural contexts, including one species that considered clothing itself an insult. Behind the formal wear, wrapped in cloth and mounted on pegs, was her grandmother's cavalry sword. It was over 100 years old. Military issue from before projectile weapons made melee combat obsolete, and absolutely beautiful in its simplicity. The blade was still sharp. Her grandmother had seen to that. "Captain, I feel compelled to point out that bringing a sword to a diplomatic dinner has a 73% probability of creating an interstellar incident." Maya pulled the sword down, testing its weight in her hands. Still perfect. "Chip, what is the probability that a dinner invitation requiring armed couriers and liability waivers is actually just a nice normal dinner?" A pause. 0.7%. Then we're already in incident territory. Might as well be armed. She found the formal scabbard, also her grandmother's, and belted it on over her diplomatic dress uniform. The sword hung at her left hip, obvious and deliberate. CHIP's orb dimmed with resignation. "I'll prepare the incident report templates." That's the spirit. Maya checked herself in the mirror. The uniform was sharp, dark blue, with enough medals and ribbons to show she'd earned her position. The sword looked completely ridiculous with it. Perfect. She'd learned something important in 5 years of first contact with dozens of alien species. They all expected humans to follow rules, to be predictable, to slot neatly into their understanding of how sapient species should behave, and every single time humans did something unexpected. The aliens got nervous. Maya had built her entire diplomatic career on making aliens nervous. "Run a full briefing on the Vrelians," she said, gathering her credentials and the invitation. "I want to know everything about them, their culture, and why they're suddenly interested in humans joining their little club. Compiling now. Captain, the Galactic Council has over 4,000 member species. Humanity receiving an invitation to the formal integration process is actually quite an honor. Chip, I've been doing this job long enough to know that when something sounds too good to be true, it's because someone's selling something." She headed for the door. "And I really want to know what they're selling. Shall I calculate the probability that you'll regret bringing the sword?" Maya grinned. "Where's the fun in that?" The Vrelian embassy floated exactly 300 meters above the diplomatic sector, held aloft by technology that Maya neither understood nor trusted. It looked like someone had melted 6 different architectural styles together and then covered the result in what appeared to be either precious gemstones or very expensive Christmas lights. The effect was somewhere between opulent and nauseating. Maya's shuttle docked at the main entrance, where Ambassador Quillnex waited with what she assumed was a welcoming expression. It was hard to tell, with 6 eyes arranged around a bulbous head. Sitting atop a body that looked like an octopus had merged with a butler. 6 arms, each currently holding a different diplomatic implement. Overachiever, Captain Rodriguez, welcome to our humble embassy. Quillnex's voice came from somewhere in the middle of his mass, processed through a translator that made him sound like a particularly pretentious English professor. Then all 6 eyes focused on her hip. Is that a weapon? Maya gestured to the sword. This is a family heirloom. Antique. Purely decorative. It appears quite sharp for decoration. My grandmother believed in keeping her decorations functional. Maya smiled in a way that showed teeth. The invitation said weapons weren't necessary. Didn't say they were forbidden. Quillnex's central eye twitched. Maya was learning alien body language fast, and that twitch screamed bureaucratic confusion. Hi, that is, technically you are correct, but the spirit of the invitation clearly implied. Ambassador, I'm human. We're very bad at implications. One of Chip's skills was remaining silent at exactly the right moments. This was one of those moments. Quillnex cycled through what Maya suspected were several emotions before landing on diplomatic resignation. Please, follow me. The other guests have already arrived. The interior of the embassy was exactly as excessive as Maya had feared. Every surface was covered in something that either glowed, moved, or both. Tapestries depicting scenes she couldn't begin to interpret hung between what appeared to be living plants that tracked movement with unsettling intelligence. The ceiling changed colors and patterns that probably meant something to someone. Quite a place you have here, Maya said, which was diplomatic speak for this is absolutely ridiculous. We pride ourselves on representing the cultural achievements of all 4,000 council species, Quillnex said, gesturing with 3 arms at different displays simultaneously. Each piece tells a story of harmonious integration, or it tells the story of what happens when you let 4,000 species decorate the same room. Chip helpfully increased his audio dampening by exactly enough that only she could hear herself. They entered a dining hall that was somehow even more excessive than the corridors. A table stretched out for 20 meters, set with more silverware than Maya had seen in her entire life. 3 other beings stood around the table in various states of discomfort. Captain Rodriguez, may I introduce Commander Thork of the Condorian hierarchy. Quillnex gestured to a being that looked like someone had given up boulder arms, legs, and a very bad attitude. Thork wore a military dress that was mostly straps, medals, and what might have been weapons, or might have been more medals. Hard to tell. Thork looked Maya up and down with eyes that glowed faintly red. A human. At a diplomatic function, the Council truly has lowered its standards. Commander, it's a pleasure to meet someone else who's clearly thrilled to be here, Maya said without missing a beat. Thork's eyes flared brighter, which Maya chose to interpret as surprised respect. And this is Professor Wimsley of the Pellucid Communion. A small, gelatinous being that looked like someone had given sentience to a very anxious puddle. Wimsley was translucent, with organs visible inside that pulsed in patterns that probably correlated with emotion. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to be introduced. I apologize for existing in this space at the same time as you. Please forgive my presence, Wimsley burbled in a voice like water over rocks. Professor, we, literally, just met. You haven't done anything worth apologizing for yet. Maya tried for reassuring, landed somewhere near bemused. I apologize for not having done anything worth apologizing for. This was going to be a long dinner. Quillnex guided her to a seat with an expression that suggested he was already regretting this event. Captain Rodriguez, this dinner is not merely a social occasion. It is, in fact, a formal evaluation of humanity's readiness to join the Galactic Council. Maya sat down slowly, making sure the sword scraped audibly against the chair. Funny, the invitation didn't mention this being a test. We prefer the term evaluation, Quillneck said, settling into his own seat with a rustle of diplomatic robes. You prefer a lot of things, don't you, Ambassador? Maya watched his eyes. All 6 of them looked away. Thork made a sound that might have been a laugh. The human asked direct questions. How refreshing. How uncivilized. Commander, in my experience, civilization is just a fancy word for the lies we agree to tell each other. Maya accepted a glass of something purple from a floating service drone. I prefer to skip to the truth. Professor Wimsley's entire body rippled with what looked like shock. But that's not how diplomacy works. We supposed to speak in metaphors and implications, and spend 6 hours saying nothing of substance, while appearing to say everything. Is that what you all do? Maya looked around the table. That sounds exhausting. Quillnix arranged his silverware with 3 different hands, a nervous gesture that Maya filed away for later use. Captain, every species that joins the Council undergoes this evaluation. It is simply to ensure cultural compatibility. Maya took a sip of the purple liquid. Tasted like grape juice, mixed with regret. And how many species have failed this evaluation? The silence that followed was deafening. None, Quillnex finally said. No species has ever failed. Not one. In 4,000 species. Maya set down her glass. That's not a test, Ambassador. That's a formality, which means this dinner isn't about evaluating humanity. She leaned forward. It's about something else entirely. So why do Yunte? We skip the 17 courses of small talk and get to what you actually want. Thork's eyes were blazing now, and if Maya wasn't mistaken, that was definitely respect. The human demands answers. Like a warrior, I despise that I'm beginning to like her. Quillnex's eyes cycled through colors. Captain Rodriguez, please, let us proceed with the dinner in the traditional manner. All will be explained in due course. Maya smiled. Ambassador, my grandmother used to say that. When someone tells you to wait for answers, it's because they're still working on their lies. She patted the sword at her hip. She also said to always bring a blade to negotiations. So far, she's batting 1,000. Chip's voice whispered in her ear. Private channel. Captain, you're making 3 separate species nervous. That might be a new personal record. Chip Maya sub-vocalist back. The night is young. Let's see if we can make it 4. The first course arrived on floating platforms that descended from the ceiling like pretentious angels. Each plate held something that looked like it had been sculpted by an artist who'd never actually seen food before, then plated by someone who thought presentation mattered more than edibility. Maya stared at the geometric arrangement of items on her plate. What am I looking at? Quillnux brightened, clearly relieved to be on script. This is a traditional pellucid foam, garnished with crystallized nutrients from the Kandorian homeworld, arranged in the symbolic pattern of council unity. Right, but what is it? All 6 of Quillnix's eyes blinked in sequence. I just explained to you. Explained the poetry. I'm asking about the food. What am I eating? Professor Wimsley rippled with agitation. Captain, one doesn't ask about the composition of formal diplomatic meals. It's considered quite rude. Why? Because it simply isn't done. Maya picked up what she hoped was a fork from the array of silverware. Professor, if I'm putting something in my body, I'm going to ask what it is. That's not rude. That's basic survival instinct. Thork, who'd been silent while examining his own plate with suspicion, suddenly laughed. It sounded like rocks in a tumbler. The human makes a valid point. I have been attending these dinners for 30 cycles and never once asked what I was consuming. He looked at his plate with new skepticism. Ambassador. What is this? Quillnex's skin tone shifted toward purple, which Maya suspected was the Vrelian equivalent of frustration. It is a foam derived from processed algae, crystallized mineral supplements, and binding agents. It is perfectly safe and approved by Council nutritional standards. So it's fancy pond scum and vitamins? Maya said. Why didn't you just say that? Because one doesn't... Quillnex caught himself. Captain, there are protocols for formal dinners. These protocols exist for very good reasons. Name one. What? Name one good reason why we coup. Just talked like normal sentient beings, instead of dancing around everything. Maya set down her fork without eating. Because from where I'm sitting, all these protocols exist to keep people from asking uncomfortable questions. Wimsley was oscillating between invisible and translucent, which Maya assumed meant extreme anxiety. Captain Rodriguez, please. The protocols maintain order. Without them, there would be chaos. Professor, I hate to break it to you, but chaos is just what order looks like when you're not in control of it. She leaned back. And speaking of control, let's talk about this evaluation. Quilnix raised 3 hands in a calming gesture. Captain, please. The evaluation is standard procedure. We simply need to ensure your species understands council expectations. Which are, excuse me, the expectations. What does humanity need to do to pass this test that apparently no one has ever failed? Maya's eyes narrowed. Because if it's impossible to fail, then it's not really a test, is it? The second course arrived before Quilnex could answer. More floating platforms bearing more sculptural food arrangements. This one looked like a small building made of translucent cubes. Before you begin, Quilnex said quickly, please note that the second course must be consumed in order from bottom to top, using only the specialized implements provided, while discussing only approved topics from the list in front of each setting. Maya looked down. There was indeed a list, written in fluent script. Topics included weather patterns on various homeworlds, the historical development of council architecture, and the philosophical implications of unified governance. What the list didn't include was anything interesting. What happens if I eat it out of order? Quilnex blinked. It would be a serious breach of protocol. But what actually happens? Does the building explode? Do I get banned from the galaxy? Well, no. But Maya picked up the entire structure with her hands and took a bite from the middle. It tasted like crunchy nothing with a hint of antiseptic. Professor Wimsley made a sound like water going down a drain. Commander Thorke's eyes blazed bright enough to cast shadows. Quilnex sat frozen, all 6 arms suspended in majestia. Maya said around a mouthful of alien architecture. Doesn't taste any different eaten raw. You can't just... Quilnex was cycling through colors now, a whole rainbow of distress. The order is traditional. It represents the structured approach to council integration. Each species must demonstrate respect for the process by eating a building in the right order. Maya swallowed. Ambassador, with respect. That's the dumbest thing I've heard all week. And I sat through a 3-hour presentation on unified filing systems yesterday. Thorke suddenly reached out with one massive hand and grabbed his food structure, crushing it into fragments before eating it in what appeared to be deliberately random order. The human is correct. This is meaningless ritual. I have participated in these dinners for 30 cycles and never questioned the absurdity. He looked at Maya. I've been here for 1 course and identified what I was too conditioned to see. Commander Thorke, please. Quilnex pleaded. You're both disrupting the evaluation. Good, Maya said. She pulled out the list of approved topics and scanned it. These topics are all surface-level nonsense. Weather. Architecture. You want humanity to join a council of 4,000 species and you're retesting us on small talk? The topics are designed to demonstrate civility and restraint. They're designed to make sure nobody says anything important. Maya tossed the list aside. Here's a topic not on the list. Why are you really testing us? What are you afraid humanity is going to do? Wimsley was vibrating now, which couldn't be healthy for a gelatinous life form. Captain, please. You're violating every protocol we have. This isn't how the evaluation works. Then how does it work, Professor? Because from where I'm sitting, this looks less like an evaluation and more like obedience training. Maya stood up, her hand resting casually on her sword hilt. Not threatening, just present. And I'm starting to wonder if that's the whole point. The 3rd course arrived. Maya didn't even look at it. Ambassador Quilnex, let me save us all some time. What happens if I keep breaking your protocols? What happens if I ask uncomfortable questions and eat the fancy building wrong and generally refuse to play along with this elaborate theater? Quilnex's eyes were all different colors now. Then you would be demonstrating that humanity is not ready for council integration. And if we follow all the rules, if we eat everything in order and discuss the weather and never ask difficult questions? A pause. Long one. Then you would be demonstrating that humanity is ready for council integration, Quilnex said quietly. So, either way, humanity ends up in the council. The only difference is whether we arrive obedient or not. Maya sat back down slowly. This isn't an evaluation. It's a sorting mechanism. You want to know if you can domesticate us before we join? The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Professor Wimsley's internal organs gurgling with distress. I think, Maya said softly, we need to have a very different conversation than the one you planned. Maya placed both hands flat on the table, leaving the sword at her hip. Threatening wasn't going to get answers. Direct confrontation might. Let me tell you what I think is happening here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. She looked at each alien in turn. 4,000 species in the Galactic Council. That's a lot of voices. A lot of opinions. A lot of potential chaos. But when I look at council proceedings, I see perfect harmony. Universal agreement. Smooth, efficient governance. She paused. That's not natural. That's not how you get when you put 4,000 different cultures in a room together. Quilnex's tentacles curled in on themselves, a defensive posture. Good. So either you've discovered some miracle of political science that makes everyone agree all the time, or something else is going on. Maya leaned forward. And these dinners, these evaluations that nobody fails, these protocols that train species to follow rules without questioning them, they're part of it, aren't they? Captain Rodriguez, you're making serious accusations without evidence. Then provide evidence to the contrary. Show me a council session where species disagree. Show me a debate that got heated. Show me literally any sign that 4,000 different civilizations maintain their independence after joining. Maya's voice was calm but relentless. Because I've been studying council records for months, and you want to know what I found? Nothing. No conflicts. No debates. Just perfect, boring, unanimous agreement on everything. Commander Thork had gone very still. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than before. When I was young, my people were warriors. We had the Kandorian honor codes. 7,000 verses of battle law, passed down for 10,000 cycles. Every Kandorian child learned them before their first weapons training. Commander. This is not relevant, Quilnex started. Let him talk, Maya said. Thork continued as if the ambassador hadn't spoken. We joined the council 200 cycles ago. I was young then, proud of my people joining galactic civilization. Within 2 generations, we had forgotten the honor codes. We stopped weapons training. We became, what is the human word, docile. His eyes fixed on Maya. I have not thought about this in decades. Why have I not thought about this? Professor Wimsley was completely transparent now, organs visible and pulsing irregularly. This is, I should object, but I find I cannot. My people were poets once. We had 12 different art forms, each with 10,000 years of history. I teach at the Council Academy of Cultural Studies, and I cannot name one of those art forms. I can describe council artistic standards, but my own people's work it's just gone from my memory. This is absurd, Quilnex said, but his voice lacked conviction. You are misremembering. All species maintain their cultural heritage within the council framework. It is one of our founding principles. Is it? Maya pulled out her personal datapad. I have here the cultural registry for the Pellucid Communion. It lists 3 approved art forms, all of which were created after council integration. Professor, you said your people had 12 traditional forms. Where are they? Wimsley stared at the datapad. His entire body began to shake. I don't know. Primera schuld. No, why don't I know? Because someone made you forget. Maya turned to Quillnex. And you're going to tell me how? The ambassador had gone completely still, all 6 arms frozen. Captain, you are treading into dangerous territory. There are aspects of council integration that are classified for good reason. There it is. Maya stood up. Classified. Which means secret. Which means you've been doing something to species when they join, and you don't want anyone to know what. It's for their own good. Quillnux's voice rose for the first time, defensive and desperate. Do you know what happens when 4,000 species try to govern together without assistance? Chaos. War. Destruction. The Council existed for 2,000 cycles before the unification protocols were developed, and in that time we lost 47 member species to internal conflicts. Unification protocols. Maya reputed. That's what you call it? What are they? Quillnex slumped in his chair. Or what passed for slumping when you had 6 arms and no real skeletal structure. Technology. Architecture. Embedded systems that encourage consensus, discourage aggression, promote harmony. They're in every council building, every embassy, every official vessel. Species integrate gradually, naturally. They maintain their core identity but become more compatible with galactic civilization. You're brainwashing them, Maya said flatly. We're optimizing them. Quillnex's colors flashed angry red. Especies. Arraigo hostil, territorial, agresive. Within a few generations, they're peaceful, cooperative, productive. The technology doesn't erase cultures. It refines them. It makes galactic civilization possible. It makes everyone the same. Maya walked around the table slowly, thinking, that's why you're testing humanity. You want to see if your protocols work on us before we officially join. But we're not responding the way we should, are we? A pause. Then Quillnex slumped further. No. Human delegations have been exposed to unification protocols for 5 years across dozens of embassies and council facilities. You should be showing signs of integration by now. Reduced questioning, increased protocol compliance, preference for harmony over conflict. All 6 eyes focused on her sword. Instead, you bring weapons to diplomatic dinners and ask questions that undermine the entire foundation of our civilization. Thork stood suddenly, his chair falling backward with a crash. 5 years, I have been near humans at various functions, and only now do I remember my people's honor codes. Only now do I question what I've become. He looked at his hands like they belonged to someone else. The human resistance to your protocols is affecting other species in proximity. Oh my, Professor Wimsleyberg. Oh my, indeed. Humans are you're immune to the unification protocols. Not immune, Maya said slowly, working it through. But resistant. Resistant enough that we keep questioning, keep pushing back, keep being ourselves despite your best efforts to make us compliant. She turned to Quill, and being near us is helping other species remember who they used to be. That's the real test tonight, isn't it? You wanted to see if concentrated exposure to your protocols, in this embassy designed for maximum effect, would finally make humanity fall in line. And instead, Thork rumbled, the human brought a sword and questions, and now 3 council members are experiencing what I believe is called an existential crisis. 4. Quillnex whispered. I'm having one too. Captain Rodriguez, if what you're suggesting is correct, if humans cannot be integrated through the protocols, then everything I have believed about the Council as success is based on technological manipulation rather than genuine unity. Welcome to the Resistance, Ambassador. Maya sat back down. Now let's talk about what happens next. The Council will never allow humanity to join if you cannot be harmonized, Quillnex said. Good. Good, Maya replied, because we're not interested in joining a civilization that requires us to stop being human. But I have a better idea. Chip's voice whispered privately. Captain, I feel I should mention that you were about to propose something wildly inappropriate for your authority level.
Chip, we stopped being appropriate when I brought a sword to dinner. Might as well go big.
She looked at the three aliens. How would you like to actually be free? Maya stood again, this time moving to the center of the dining room. She drew her sword smoothly, and three aliens flinched in perfect synchronization. Relax. I'm making a point, not a threat. She held the blade up to the light. It gleamed, old and practical, and utterly out of place in the excessive embassy. My grandmother carried this in the Unification Wars. That's what we called them, bunch of human nations trying to force everyone else to think the same way. She was on the resistance side, the side that said maybe unity at the cost of identity isn't worth it. She walked slowly around the room, examining the walls, the decorations, the architectural features. This embassy is beautiful. Excessive, but beautiful, and every single piece of it is designed to make me more compliant, more agreeable, more willing to follow rules without question. She stopped at a ornate wall panel that pulsed with subtle light patterns. This one's particularly clever. The rhythm matches standard humanoid neural patterns, designed to induce calm and receptivity. Quillnex had gone pale, or what passed for pale, in a species with no real blood. How did you? That's classified technology. Only council engineers know the specifications. Ambassador, I'm Huma. We've spent our entire history taking things apart to see how they work. Maya tapped the panel with her sword. Your security assumed that because I brought an obvious weapon, it was the only tool I had. But this sword, she smiled. This is just decoration, purely ceremonial, like I said. She reached into her uniform jacket and pulled out a small device that looked like a modified communicator. This is the actual tool. Military-grade scanner, modified by our best engineers specifically to detect subliminal technology. We've been mapping your systems for 3 years. That's impossible, Quillnex breathed. No species has ever detected the unification protocols before integration. They're designed to be imperceptible. 2 species that do you and have a 5,000-year history of paranoia and refusing to do what they retold. Maya activated the device. A holographic map appeared, showing the embassy's layout with bright points of light scattered throughout. 17 different systems in this building alone, all designed to make visitors more seductive. That's why you wanted the dinner here. Maximum exposure in a controlled environment. She walked to a ornate pillar, tapping it with her sword. This one emits a frequency that suppresses critical thinking, subtle but effective over extended exposure. Moving to another decoration, this sculpture contains a network broadcaster that synchronizes neural patterns in a 20-meter radius, forces consensus by making everyone literally think more alike. Commander Thork approached the sculpture, examining it with eyes that blazed with something between rage and wonder. I have stood beside this piece at dozens of functions. Dozens. And I never questioned why I found myself agreeing with positions I once would have challenged. Because it wasn't your choice. Commander. That's the point. Maya turned to Quillnex. Every council building, every embassy, every official space is filled with these systems. Species don't choose to become compliant. You make them compliant, then tell them it's their choice. It's the perfect crime. No one remembers they were ever different. Professor Wimsley had reformed into a more solid state, his organs now barely visible. This is monstrous. The council, everything we built. It's all based on technological coercion. Not everything, Maya said gently. The cooperation is real. The peace is real. The technology just forces it to happen instead of letting it develop naturally. She looked at Quillnex. That's why you're terrified of humanity. We're the first species to resist strongly enough that other species notice. We're a virus in your system. Exposure to humans makes the protocols less effective. You're destroying 10,000 years of stability, Quillnex said, but there was no anger in his voice. Just exhaustion. Without the protocols, the council will fragment. Species will remember old grudges. Wars will reignite. The galaxy will burn. Maybe, Maya acknowledged. Or maybe species will learn to cooperate without being forced. Maybe real unity, built on choice rather than manipulation, will be stronger than what you've created. She sheathed her sword. But that's not actually my decision to make. I'm just a captain. I don't speak for humanity. But you do speak rather loudly, Chip observed privately. Mayak ignored him. Here's what I'm proposing. Humanity doesn't join the council under the current system. We refuse. We make noise. We tell every species we meet about what we've discovered. She watched Quilnux's reaction. And we offer an alternative. A real alliance, built on actual choice and free will. It'll be messier. There'll be conflicts, but it'll be genuine. Thork rumbled with something that might have been approval. The Kandorian hierarchy will need to evaluate this information. But I find myself remembering what we once were, what we could be again. He looked at Maya. Your grandmother's sword. She carried it in resistance to forced unity. You carry it for the same reason. I carry it because she taught me that sometimes you need a visible reminder that you're capable of saying no. Maya touched the hilt. The sword isn't for fighting. It's for remembering that you have the choice to fight if necessary. Elegant philosophy, Professor Wimsley said, more solid now than Maya had seen him. Humans are fascinating. Frustrating, but fascinating. I believe I need to research what my people's 12 art forms actually were. It seems important. Quilnex sat in silence for a long moment. All 6 eyes closed. When S spoke, his voice was different. Less formal, more genuine. Captain Rodriguez, you have created the largest diplomatic crisis in Council history. Species will demand answers. The technology will be examined. Everything we built will be questioned. Good day, Maya said. Questions are healthy. Questions are how you know you're still thinking for yourself. I have been ambassador for 200 cycles. I have never, not once, questioned council policy. Quilnex opened his eyes, and they were all the same color now. Clear and focused. That should have bothered me. Why did that not bother me? Because you were surrounded by technology telling you not to be bothered. Maya pulled out a small metallic cube. This is a jammer. Military prototype. It blocks unification protocol frequencies in a 10-meter radius. Consider it a gift. She set it on the table. Use it or don't. But at least now you have the choice. A weapon and a gift, Thork observed. The human comes with both threats and offerings. This is proper diplomacy. Messy, uncertain, built on genuine exchange rather than forced agreement. He actually smiled, which looked terrifying on a being made of animated rock. I despise how much I'm beginning to like humans. The feeling is mutual, Commander. Maya checked her chronometer. I believe this concludes a diplomatic dinner, unless anyone actually wants to eat the remaining 14 courses of architecturally significant food. I would rather digest the implications of this evening than whatever nutrient foam courses remain, Professor Wimsley said. I'm putting that quote in my report, Maya told him. It's poetry. Quilnex stood, all 6 arms moving in a gesture that Maya's cultural database said indicated formal respect. Captain Rodriguez, you have disrupted everything, challenged ancient systems, and forced 3 council members to question the foundation of our civilization. By all traditional measures, you have failed the evaluation completely. I know, Maya said cheerfully. And yet, Quilnex continued, I find myself grateful for the disruption. Humanity will not be integrated into the council as it currently exists. But perhaps the council needs to integrate with humanity instead. Learn to function without the technological assistance. That sounds like years of complicated negotiations and cultural exchange, Maya said. It does indeed. Perfect. I love job security. Maya headed for the door, then paused. Oh, an ambassador. Next time you want to evaluate humanity, maybe just ask us questions over coffee. We're much more cooperative when we're not being psychologically manipulated. I shall remember that, though I suspect with humans, cooperation is always negotiable. Now you're learning. Maya grinned. CHIP filed this under successful diplomatic incidents. Captain, that is not a category in the filing system. It is now. 3 weeks later, Maya sat in her office staring at a stack of documentation that would have been physically impossible to create without advanced technology. Reports, analysis papers, incident reviews, and somehow a promotion. I still do understand how getting promoted is the consequence of causing the largest diplomatic crisis in galactic history, she said to Chip, who floated beside her desk in his usual position of digital judgment. Technically, you exposed the largest diplomatic crisis. The crisis already existed. You simply made everyone aware of it. Chip's orb pulsed thoughtfully. Also, humanity needed someone to lead the new Department of Unfiltered Diplomatic Relations, and you were the obvious choice. The Department of what now? Unfiltered Diplomatic Relations. It's humanity's official response to the Council situation. The department is authorized to engage with species without Council oversight, question established protocols, and generally continue doing what you've been doing. But with paperwork. Maya leaned back in her chair. The sword hung on her wall now, mounted and visible. Her grandmother would have approved, so I've been promoted for being difficult. You've been promoted for being effectively difficult. There's a distinction. Chip displayed a holographic news feed. The Council is in turmoil. 17 species have formally requested information about unification protocols. The Condorian hierarchy has begun teaching their honor codes again. Professor Wimsley's research project on per-council cultural independence has 300 species requesting participation. Ambassador Quilnex is reportedly in therapy. However, he sent you a message this morning. Chip projected it. The message was written in Quilnex's overly formal style, but the content was surprisingly personal. Captain Rodriguez, I write to inform you that I have been using the jamming device you provided. The experience of thinking without technological assistance is simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. I have remembered things, questioned things, even disagreed with council policy during a session yesterday. It caused quite a disturbance. I find I do not regret the disturbance. You told me questions are healthy. I am beginning to believe you were correct. This has been the most stressful and enlightening 3 weeks of my 400-year lifespan. I am uncertain whether to thank you or file a formal complaint. Perhaps both. Ambassador Quilnex. Maya smiled. Send him a response. Tell him both reactions are completely valid, and that's what makes them genuine. Sent. Chip paused. Captain, I'm required to inform you that the incident has generated significant interest from other species. 43 different civilizations have requested direct diplomatic contact with humanity, specifically requesting representatives who, quote, ask uncomfortable questions, unquote. 43 species want difficult humans. Apparently word has spread that proximity to humans reduces protocol effectiveness. Some species see this as a threat. Others see it as liberation. CHIP displayed a star map with highlighted systems. These are species that have quietly indicated they would welcome human diplomatic presence. They're using coded language to avoid council detection, but the message is clear. They want help remembering who they were. Maya studied the map. 43 different civilizations, scattered across the galaxy, all reaching out because humanity refused to be domesticated. We're going to need more difficult diplomats. Humanity has an abundance of those, Chip observed. The challenge will be coordinating them. A chime indicated an incoming call. Maya accepted it, and Commander Thork's craggy face appeared on the screen. Captain Rodriguez, I am contacting you with an official request from the Condorian hierarchy. His eyes were blazing with what Maya now recognized as enthusiasm. We require human advisors to assist in cultural reclamation. Specifically, we need people who are, in your words, good at being annoying. Commander, that's the nicest thing anyone said to me all week. We are a warrior. People who forgot how to fight, how to disagree. How to maintain individual identity within a collective. Thork leaned closer to the screen. Humans never forgot these things. We need teachers who can help us remember what the protocols made us forget. I'll put together a team, Maya said. Fair warning, they will be irritating. Question everything, and probably break most of your remaining protocols. Excellent. That is precisely what we require. Thork's expression shifted to something that might have been concern. Captain, there is resistance within the Council to these changes. Some species view the disruption of unification protocols as existential threat. They have existed in technological harmony for so long that the concept of genuine disagreement terrifies them. Are we talking about political resistance or something more serious? For now, political, but tensions are rising. Thork's eyes dimmed slightly. The galaxy is awakening from a 10,000-year dream. Some will welcome consciousness. Others will fight to remain asleep. Then I guess we better make sure the species waking up have support. Maya glanced at the sword on her wall. Thanks for the heads up, Commander. After Thork disconnected, Maya sat in silence for a moment. CHIP. Demonstrating the situational awareness that made him occasionally useful, waited without comment. Finally, Maya spoke. Cheap. Calculate the probability that humanity just accidentally started a galactic revolution. Accidentally implies lack of intention. Your actions were quite deliberate. Fine. Calculate the probability that I deliberately started a galactic revolution by bringing a sword to dinner. A pause while Chip processed. Approximately 94%, Captain. And the probability that this will either revolutionize or completely destroy galactic civilization. Those are not mutually exclusive outcomes. The probability of significant systemic change is 98%. The probability of that change being categorized as revolution or destruction depends heavily on perspective and outcome preferences. Maya laughed. So we're either liberators or chaos agents, depending on who you ask. Correct. Though I should note that several species have begun using the term chaos agents as a compliment when referring to humans. I'll take it. Maya pulled up her schedule. More diplomatic meetings. More species wanting to talk with humans who asked uncomfortable questions. More opportunities to be deliberately difficult in the name of genuine freedom. You know what, Chip? I think my grandmother would be proud. Your grandmother would likely point out that you've created more work for yourself. She'd also point out that work worth doing is rarely easy. Maya stood and retrieved the sword from the wall, checking its edge out of habit. Still sharp. Speaking of which, I have another diplomatic function tomorrow. Some species, called the Yotherian, they're reportedly very formal, very traditional, very invested in following established procedures. Captain, you're not seriously considering. Chip, prepare incident report templates, and look up what weapon would be appropriate for their cultural context. Maya grinned. If we're going to be the galaxy's official chaos agents, we might as well do it with style. You do realize that at some point, bringing weapons to diplomatic functions will stop being surprising and just become expected human behavior. Good. Then we'll switch tactics and show up unarmed. Keep everyone guessing. She returned the sword to its mount. The point isn't the weapon, Chip. It's the reminder that we have choices, that everyone has choices, even when systems are designed to make them forget. That's surprisingly philosophical. For someone who just got promoted for causing interstellar incidents, I contain multitudes. Maya checked her reflection in the window. The uniforms still looked sharp. The medals still looked earned. And somewhere in the galaxy, 3 species were having identity crises because one human refused to eat a building in the correct order. Another message arrived, this one from the Galactic Council itself, marked Urgent. Should I be worried? Maya asked it. The message is marked urgent, but also includes a request for, quote, preliminary informal discussion regarding potential restructuring of Council integration protocols with emphasis on voluntary participation and cultural preservation. unquote. Chip's orb brightened. Captain, I believe they're asking you to help them redesign the system you just broke. Maya read through the message. It was formal, careful, and buried under layers of diplomatic language. But Chip was right. The Council wanted humanity's input on creating something new. Something that didn't require technological manipulation. Something built on actual choice. Well, Maya said, that's ambitious. It's also likely to take decades of negotiation. Decades of telling the most powerful political organization in the galaxy that they've been doing everything wrong. Chip, that sounds exhausting and frustrating and probably impossible. She smiled. When do we start? Your first meeting with Council representatives is scheduled for next week. Location to be determined. The Council is requesting you suggest a venue. Maya thought about that. Every Council building was filled with unification protocols. Every embassy designed to influence and control. If they were going to redesign the system, they needed a space that didn't carry that baggage. Tell them we're meeting on Earth. In a coffee shop. No fancy embassy, no excessive decorations, no architectural psychology, just people talking. She paused. And Chip, make sure the venue allows weapons. I want everyone to have the choice. Noted. Shall I inform them that humanity reserves the right to bring both literal and metaphorical swords to all future negotiations? Put it in the official documentation. Make it a clause. Maya sat back down at her desk, looking at the mountain of work ahead. The human clause. We question everything, break unnecessary protocols, and maintain our right to be inconvenient. The Council can accept that, or they can try to govern the galaxy without us. Captain, you do realize that framing cooperation as a threat is a very human approach to diplomacy. Chip, we're redefining diplomacy. Might as well do it our way. The orb pulsed with what Maya had learned to recognize as digital amusement. I'm logging this entire conversation. Future historians will either celebrate you as a visionary or use you as a cautionary tale about the dangers of giving humans diplomatic authority. Why not both? Maya pulled up the first file in her stack and started reading. Somewhere in the galaxy, species were waking up, remembering, questioning, choosing, and humanity. Chaos agents and liberators and absolutely terrible dinner guests were just getting started. Her terminal chimed with another incoming request. Another species wanting difficult humans to help them remember independence. Maya accepted the request and started drafting a response. Above her desk, her grandmother's sword gleamed in the office light. A reminder that sometimes the most effective weapon is the one you never use but always carry. A reminder that saying no is a skill worth practicing. A reminder that questions are more powerful than answers. Maya smiled and got to work. The galaxy was waking up, and it was going to be loud, messy, and absolutely glorious. Turns out, all it took was one human who refused to eat dinner in the correct order.